George Washington University. That's live this afternoon on C-SPAN 3. Thanks for joining us on this Thursday. Enjoy the rest of your day.
The House will be in order. The Chair lays before the House a communication from the Speaker.
The Speaker's Rooms, Washington, D.C., March 29, 2012. I hereby appoint the Honorable Charles F. Bass to act as Speaker pro tempore on this day. Signed, John A. Boehner, Speaker of the House of Representatives.
The prayer will be offered by the Chaplain, Father Conroy.
Let us pray. Loving and gracious God, we give you thanks for giving us another day. We ask today that you bless the members of the People's House to be the best and most faithful servants of the people they serve. May they be filled with gratitude at the opportunity they have to serve in this place. We thank you for the abilities they have been given to do their work and to contribute to the common good. May they use their talents as good stewards of your many gifts and thereby be true servants of justice and partners in peace. Give each member clarity of thought and purity of motive so that they may render their service as their best selves. And may all that is done this day in the People's House be for your greater honor and glory. Amen.
Amen. The Chair has examined the journal of the last day's proceedings and announces to the House its approval thereof. Pursuant to Clause 1 of Rule 1, the journal stands approved. The Pledge of Allegiance will be led by the gentlewoman from Missouri, Mrs. Hartzler.
Thank you. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The Chair will entertain up to 5 requests for 1-minute speeches on each side of the aisle. For what purpose does the gentleman from Texas seek recognition?
Request unanimous consent to address the House for 1 minute.
Without objection, so ordered.
Mr. Speaker, on Monday I visited Hardgrave High School in Huffman, Texas. Students at this school come from hard-working, rural, lower middle-class families, and I met with 400 seniors, and almost every one of them had a job. I was impressed by their intelligent questions about government and this country. One student, Karina Guardo, asked me this: why should those of us that work hard have to sacrifice our tax dollars for free handouts to potheads and others that are too lazy to work? This has nothing to do with being black, brown, or white, because I'm Hispanic. They should be made to try harder to find work, submit to drug testing to qualify for this money. Mr. Speaker, Karina and several other of her students understand a concept many people have forgotten: personal responsibility. The American dream means that if you work hard, you can do anything in this country. And it's the individual, not the federal government, who controls our future. Young people must know that hard work still pays off because it is the American way. And that's just the way it is.
The time of the gentleman has expired. For what purpose does the gentleman from Delaware seek recognition? Without objection, so ordered.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I rise today in support of a 10-year, $4 trillion deficit reduction plan that is both balanced and comprehensive. In the Congress today, there is now broad support in both parties from both chambers to reduce the deficit by $4 trillion over 10 years. That's the goal set by the President's Deficit Reduction Commission. Today, we will consider a number of budget proposals for fiscal year 2013. None of them is perfect, but it's critical that we come together behind a reasonable 10-year, $4 trillion framework and start working on the details. Time is running out to fix this critical problem. I believe the Van Hollen and Cooper-Latourette proposals are both frameworks that deserve support and consideration. Both of them are balanced and fair. They include revenue increases and spending cuts, and they don't undermine the fragile economic recovery in the short term. Progress is difficult, and today's budget votes are only the first step, but I look forward to working with my colleagues on both sides of the aisle on this difficult task. Thank you. I yield back.
Gentleman's time has expired. For what purpose does the gentleman from South Carolina seek recognition? Without objection, so ordered.
Mr. Speaker, when President Obama was inaugurated in January 2009, the average nationwide price for a gallon of gasoline was $1.84. The 2012 March nationwide average has been $3.89 or higher, reflecting an 110% plus increase. Keep in mind that every penny increase in the price of gasoline costs the U.S. economy $1 billion and American consumers $4 million per day. Now, last week, Secretary of Energy Stephen Chu, while testifying in front of a House committee, was asked to grade his performance on American gasoline prices. He graded himself an A. An A, America, when the price of the pump for American families has gone up over 110%. I'm sorry, Secretary Chu, America doesn't grade on a curve. We give your performance and the performance of the administration's handling of energy in America the grade of F. And with that, I yield back.
Gentleman's time has expired. For what purpose does the gentleman from California seek recognition? Without objection, so ordered.
Mr. Speaker, we all have our own ideas on how we should balance the budget, but missing in today's debate is an approach that will provide a bipartisan effort to solve our nation's fiscal problems. No one party has the answers. We can do this not through a Republican nor a Democratic proposed budget unless we are willing to demonstrate bipartisanship. And that's why I'm opposing both the Republican and the Democratic proposals. These are not an answer to our nation's fiscal problems. Instead, the Simpson-Bowles approach reflected in the Cooper-La Tourette substitute is the preferred approach that we need to follow. Last night's votes and today's votes will once again demonstrate that the Congress is tone deaf. It's time to put our economy back on fiscal sustainability and pass the Simpson-Bowles measure that last night fell far short. By cutting $4 trillion from the deficit over 10 years through spending cuts and tax reform and ensuring the solvency of entitlements such as Medicare and Social Security. That's what I suggest that we do. It's time that we act in a bipartisan fashion. I yield the balance of my time.
Time of the gentleman has expired. For what purpose does the gentlelady from Missouri seek recognition?
Seek unanimous consent to address the House for 1 minute to revise and extend my remarks.
Without objection, so ordered.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Last week marked the 2-year anniversary of the President's health care law going into effect. And as a former teacher, I think it's important that we look at it and see how it makes the grade. I believe that if you compare it to the matrix of its failed promises, that it deserves an F. They said that it would create jobs. It didn't. In fact, CBO says 800,000 people will lose their jobs because of it. They said it would lower costs. It hasn't. Premiums have increased by over $2,000 per individual. They said that it would keep Americans be able to keep their own plan and their own doctor. The administration's own estimate says that over 20 million Americans could lose employer-sponsored health care as a result of it. And is it constitutional? I believe it's not. It's time to have a grade A health insurance here in America, one that increases accessibility and affordability. That's what House Republicans are advancing, and that's what they deserve. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Time of the gentlelady has expired. For what purpose does the gentlelady from Illinois seek recognition? Without objection, so ordered.
Mr. Speaker, for 100 years, women in the Chicago area have been improving the world around them through the Junior League of Chicago. This summer, the Junior League will mark its centennial anniversary, and I join the current and past volunteers of this wonderful organization in celebrating its many contributions. In fact, from 1976 to 1978, I served as president of the Junior League and am eternally grateful for the opportunity this great organization gave me to work with the Head Start program in Chicago. It was the beginning of many wonderful and fulfilling years of public service. Mr. Speaker, since Lucy McCormick Blair Lind founded the organization in 1912, the Junior League of Chicago has contributed more than 10 million hours of volunteer service. They have treated scarlet fever, funded epilepsy research, and launched what later became the Chicago Children's Museum. These are just a few of the examples over 100 years of service. Today I applaud the Junior League and wish its volunteers another 100 years of success. I yield back.
Gentlelady's time has expired. For what purpose does the gentleman from Ohio seek recognition?
I ask unanimous consent to address the House for 1 minute and revise and extend.
Without objection, so ordered.
Mr. Speaker, today House Republicans will stand up to business as usual in Washington and vote for a budget that will help our economy grow, guarantee the promise of Medicare for everyone, and put forth a true all-of-the-above energy strategy in America. Now, compare this to President Obama's budget, one filled with more of his failed tax and spend policies, one in which he called for over $45 billion in new taxes on American energy production. With prices surging at the pump, more than doubling since President Obama took office, it's unconscionable that he would want to further burden Americans, small businesses and families who are already struggling. America sits on top of the largest amount of total recoverable energy resources in the world, including oil, natural gas, and coal. That's 1.3 trillion barrels of oil equivalent. Just imagine if we developed them as part of a real all-of-the-above strategy. Job creation would surge, gas prices would fall, and America would be one step closer to energy independence. And with that, I yield back.
Gentleman's time has expired. For what purpose does the gentleman from Texas seek recognition? Without objection, so ordered.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I rise to say thank you to the many persons who supported the Homes for Heroes Act that passed day before yesterday. This is an important piece of legislation that will place a person in HUD whose sole responsibility it is to monitor homelessness among our veterans. We believe that in solving the homelessness problem, we can also solve a lot of other problems that they have. I'd like to thank all of the persons on the committee, especially my chairman of the committee, Mr. Bacchus, my ranking member, Mr. Frank, Ms. Waters, who has helped me for years with this legislation. I'd like to thank Ms. Biggert, Mr. Gutierrez, the chairs of the subcommittee and ranking member. I'd also thank Mr. Cantor, because I did have a chance to visit with him about this, and he helped to promote this legislation. Ms. Pelosi, of course, is a big supporter of our veterans, as is the case with Mr. Hoyer. One additional person that was very helpful, Mr. Henserling, he and I had a great conversation about this, and he was very supportive and mentioned it in open mic at one of our hearings. So I thank everyone. Our veterans are better served. God bless the United States of America, and thank God for our veterans.
Time of the gentleman from Texas has expired. For what purpose does the gentleman from Florida seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, by direction of the Committee on Rules, I call up House Resolution 600 and ask for its immediate consideration.
Clerk will report the resolution.
House Calendar Number 123, House Resolution 600. Resolved that upon adoption of this resolution, it shall be in order to consider in the House the bill H.R. 4281 to provide an extension of federal aid highway safety, motor carrier safety, transit, and other programs funded out of the Highway Trust Fund, pending enactment of a multi-year law reauthorizing such programs. All points of order against consideration of the bill are waived. The bill shall be considered as read. All points of order against provisions in the bill are waived. The previous question shall be considered as ordered on the bill and any amendment thereto to final passage without intervening motion except 1 hour of debate equally divided and controlled by the chair and ranking minority member of the Committee on Transportation and Infrastructure, and 2, 1 motion to recommit. Section 2, the requirement of Clause 6A of Rule 13 for a two-thirds vote to consider a report from the Committee on Rules on the same day it is presented to the House is waived with respect to any resolution reported on the legislative day of March 29, 2012, providing for consideration or disposition of a measure extending expiring Surface Transportation Authority.
The gentleman from Florida is recognized for 1 hour.
For the purpose of debate only, I yield the customary 30 minutes to my colleague from Massachusetts, Mr. McGovern, and pending which time I yield myself the time I might consume.
Gentleman's recognized.
During consideration of this resolution, all time yielded is for the purpose of debate only. Mr. Speaker, I ask unanimous consent that all members have 5 legislative days to revise and extend their remarks.
Without objection, so ordered.
Mr. Speaker, I rise today in support of this rule and the potential it holds for a bipartisan, bicameral agreement for a long-term transportation reauthorization bill. House Resolution 600 provides for a closed rule for prompt consideration of H.R. 4281, the Surface Transportation Extension Act of 2012. H.R. 4281 simply calls for a 90-day extension of current transportation legislation at existing funding levels. Without this extension, critical transportation programs around the country will begin to shut down Saturday night at midnight. The federal government will no longer be able to collect the user fees necessary to maintain the Highway Trust Fund, and eventually it would be unable to pay obligations that have already been incurred for construction projects. Most importantly, according to recent reports, a shutdown Saturday would immediately furlough 3,500 federal employees and put up to 130,000 highway projects at risk. A 90-day extension is no one's ideal scenario, but at this juncture it appears necessary. Necessary not only to avoid the calamity that comes from current legislation's expiration, but also necessary for the continued potential for a long-term reauthorization. And with passage, this extension, a long-term reauthorization remains within reach. The transportation bill passed out of the House Transportation Infrastructure Committee has many laudable provisions. It streamlines and consolidates federal transportation programs, cuts red tape and Washington bureaucracy, and increases funding flexibility to states and local governments. Better leverages existing infrastructure resources and encouraging more private sector participation in rebuilding our nation's infrastructure. It provides 5 years of certainty and stability with that flat funding that is paid for without raising taxes. I'm sure that the authors and proponents of the Senate bill can point to a menu of laudable policy provisions within their bill as well. With this extension, we don't give up on the likelihood of the best of both bills being reconciled for long-term certainty and stability, and we can provide to those tasked with rebuilding our nation's transportation infrastructure. To be sure, however, the task at hand remains avoiding expiration of the existing authorization this Saturday night. I don't have to reiterate the consequences that loom if we do not act. As the Chamber of Commerce wrote in a letter to the members earlier this week, an extension is not the best course of action, but it must be done. Once again, Mr. Speaker, I rise in support of this rule and the potential this short-term extension holds for coming together in a bipartisan, bicameral way for a long-term authorization of our nation's transportation programs. I encourage my colleagues to vote yes on this rule, and I reserve the balance of my time.
The gentleman from Florida reserves the balance of his time. The gentleman from Massachusetts.
Mr. Speaker, I want to thank the gentleman from Florida for yielding me the customary 30 minutes, and I ask unanimous consent to revise and extend my remarks.
Without objection, so ordered.
And I yield myself such time as I may consume.
The gentleman is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, where do I begin? This is one more opportunity lost, one more opportunity squandered by this Republican-controlled House. We are just days away from the expiration of the laws that authorize our surface transportation programs, and yet here we are debating a politically charged, unnecessary, and partisan bill that just kicks the can down the road a few months. Last month, this House began, but could not finish, consideration of the most partisan drafted, possibly the only partisan drafted, highway reauthorization bill in history. Let me repeat that. The House could not complete consideration of the Republican bill, a Republican bill that would have been considered a joke if it weren't such a serious breach of responsibility. This is like a bad soap opera. Just when the twists and turns can't get more fantastical and crazy, someone comes up with an even zanier idea just to keep the plot lines moving along. I'm waiting for the mysterious twin brother to show up. And the plot line here is that the Republican leadership keeps manufacturing ways not to do the simple thing, the right thing, and that is to pass the Senate bill, the 2-year bill that passed the Senate 74-22, clearly and overwhelmingly in a bipartisan fashion. It's refreshing and a bit strange when the Senate can put their ideological differences aside and actually pass a decent bill. It's not every day that Senator Barbara Boxer and Senator James Inhofe agree on a bill, but that's what happened with the Senate bill. Now, I'm not going to stand here and say that the Senate bill is the bill I would have drafted. To the contrary, I want a 5-year reauthorization that is fully funded, a bill that results in real jobs, and a bill that invests in important areas like public transit. While the Senate bill lasts for only 2 years, it is a good start, and it is much better than the Republican proposal we have here today. For my colleagues who have a short memory, let me recap where we were last month. The Republican leadership took a 1,000-page bill, undoubtedly the most partisan transportation bill in congressional history, and made it worse. They took a bill that was written in secret and jammed through the Transportation Committee and inserted unrelated and controversial provisions like the Keystone Pipeline, ANWR, offshore drilling, and cuts in federal pensions. Even worse, they changed the rules in the middle of the game. Specifically, after everyone had submitted their amendments to the original single bill, Speaker Boehner decided to split it into 3 separate measures, which meant that many of the amendments could not be considered in a way that they were originally drafted. Now, of course, the Republicans quickly realized that they didn't have the votes for that bill and yanked it from the floor. It must have been pretty embarrassing because it's been over a month since they gave up on that bill. And what has the Republican leadership been doing over the last month? Negotiating with House Democrats to reach a bipartisan compromise? Talking with the Senate on ways to properly reauthorize these programs and bring jobs back to the economy? Of course not. Over the past month, the Republican leadership has been sitting around pointing fingers and complaining that they can't move a transportation bill, even though Republicans are in control of this House. It's the end of March, and Republicans can't get their act together to get a real transportation bill passed. You call that leadership? Give me a break. Leadership is about governing. Leadership is about doing what's right. Honestly, Mr. Speaker, there is no leadership here. Shame on this leadership for bringing us here today. Shame on this leadership for putting the American jobs on the line just because they cannot manage their own internal politics. That's right. By refusing to pass the Senate bill today, Republicans are putting American jobs on the line. With the economy slowly recovering, and with more than 2.7 million construction and manufacturing workers still out of work, why do Republicans want to play Russian roulette with this important jobs bill? We should not be in this position today. This is a manufactured crisis, a crisis that is a product of a lack of leadership, a crisis that is a product of a lack of bipartisan cooperation. Mr. Speaker, we had an opportunity to consider the Senate bill today, but the Rules Committee, mislabeled by some as the most open rules committee in decades, blocked that bill from consideration. That's right. This new majority put this bill on the floor, sight unseen and without any markup or hearing. They waived their own 3-day layover rule, and this is a closed rule. In fact, I can't even seem to find a CBO score for this bill. And this is the open process my colleagues on the Rules Committee are so proud of. This is a completely closed rule. I offered the Senate bill as an amendment to this rule last night so that members could have an opportunity to vote on it today. Not in place of the Republican bill, but as a standalone amendment. Speaker Boehner is fond of saying, let the House work its will. But apparently the Republicans on the Rules Committee do not believe in that philosophy because they blocked my amendment on a party line vote. And why did they block my amendment? As the chairman of the Rules Committee is fond of usually saying, because they could. Now, I will try one more time to offer the Senate amendment. Congressman Tim Bishop introduced H.R. 14, the exact same language as the Senate-passed bill. If this House defeats the previous question, Congressman Bishop will be able to offer his amendment to the Republican bill, not in place of, just alongside the Republican bill. The House, like Speaker Boehner promised, would then be able to work its will. Now, it's clear, Mr. Speaker, that the Republican leadership is more concerned with political victories than with legislating. It is clear that the Republican leadership would rather score cheap political points with their right-wing base than promote and create jobs in America. President Clinton was fond of saying, the perfect can't be the enemy of the good. There's a perfectly good bipartisan Senate bill that would pass this House overwhelmingly if the Republican leadership decided to bring it up. But no. The Republican leadership would rather play chicken with people's jobs on the line instead of actually legislating, let alone legislating in a bipartisan way. It is clear that when the far right wing of the far right wing opposes something, the Republican leadership crumbles like cheap asphalt. I reserve the balance of my time.
Gentleman from Massachusetts reserves some time. The gentleman from Florida.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In 2005, the Congress passed Safety Lou, which was the last transportation reauthorization bill that was long-term. There was, under the Democratic-controlled House, a bill proposed by the chairman that never made it to the floor. And because it didn't make it to the floor, my, how we've forgotten. It was only a couple years ago, but it didn't make it. It expired, Safety Lou expired in 2009, September 30th, and, you know, there was a bill, never got marked up, never happened. So what happened instead? Well, let's see. Number one, Democrats did a one-month extension. Number two, there was a 1.5-month extension. Number three, there was a 2.5-month extension. Number four, there was a 1-month extension. Number five, there was a 9-month extension. Number six, there was a 2-month extension. So I'm not sure what you're talking about, but as far as lack of leadership, we're a long way from having that many extensions. We're a long way from having done what was done in the previous Congress. So I would suspect that we have an opportunity here. And that opportunity, the way to avoid a shutdown of the nation's transportation programs this Saturday night, is to pass this extension. And the only way we can get to that is pass this rule, which allows for us to consider that extension. The only way we can keep ourselves from having 3,500 federal employees furloughed is to pass this extension. The only way we can keep 130,000 projects that are highway projects from being at risk is to pass this. I reserve the balance of my time.
Gentleman from Florida reserves his time. The gentleman from Massachusetts.
Mr. Speaker, I yield myself such time as I may consume.
Gentleman's recognized.
Let me respond to my friend. The difference is that we have a bipartisan, an overwhelmingly bipartisan compromise that has passed one of the chambers here, the Senate. And so this is the choice we have. Do we do these short-term extensions so that cities and towns and states can't plan? Or do we take this bipartisan compromise that the Senate has put together so that there's some certainty for our cities and towns and for our states? I mean, that's the difference. I mean, what's happening here is that there is an internal fight within the Republican Party. The right wing is battling with the extreme right wing, and they can't agree with each other because you have people in the Republican Party who don't believe in a public sector. So, you know, as this economy is struggling to get back on its feet and we see some recovery more and more every month, we could actually help that recovery. We can move things along. We could create more jobs if we were to act in a different way today. But instead, the right wing and the extreme right wing are having a fight within the Republican Party, so the Republican House leadership is paralyzed. That's not leadership. That's just irresponsible. At this point, I'd like to yield 3 minutes to the gentleman from Oregon, Mr. Blumenauer.
Gentleman from Oregon is recognized for 3 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I appreciate the gentleman's courtesy, and he is absolutely right. The passage of this rule and the approach is not the only way to avert a shutdown. And in fact, the moving forward here is precisely the wrong approach, because sadly what's going to happen is it's going to bifurcate the construction cycle. There's work going on around the country that people want to move forward, and the approval of a 90-day extension means that people cannot plan for the entire construction cycle. If they take the gentleman's suggestion and approve the bipartisan Senate bill, there will be certainty not just for this construction cycle, but the next construction cycle. It's frustrating to watch our friends on the other side of the aisle play chicken. Remember the FAA shutdown, where the Republicans in the House refused to accept a bill that passed the Senate overwhelmingly, 89 votes for the FAA. Instead, they chose to leave town, putting out of work 70,000 construction workers and laid off 4,000 others in the FAA. We don't have to play this sort of infrastructure chicken. Later today, we are going to consider the worst budget for transportation in anybody's memory. The Republican budget that will be decided later today calls for a 46% reduction in transportation funding. There isn't enough money in the Republican budget to even pay for the areas that are already obligated. I developed this in a friendly way in the Budget Committee, and they had to agree. There are $6.5 billion more in actual outlay, contracts, roads, bridges, transit projects that we're committed to than they would pay for. It's sad that we reach this point. I hope the House rejects this rule that will allow Mr. Bishop to present the Senate bill for an up or down vote. The Republicans are afraid that actually there will be dozens of their members that will join us in a bipartisan vote. It's a pipe dream that somehow we're better off cutting the construction cycle in half, not allowing people to plan, that somehow we'll come together and merge the worst transportation bill in history that would overturn 21 years of transportation reform and the agreement of President Reagan that we would dedicate money for transit, that we throw this out to the House bill that was so bad they wouldn't even have. May I have another minute?
Gentleman, additional 1 minute.
They wouldn't even have a hearing on it. I served for a dozen years on the Transportation Committee. I've worked with the Transportation Committee with Republican and Democratic chairs. And this is an embarrassment that the process is not working. It doesn't have to be partisan and limited. We have two high-level commissions that call for more investment and reform. The best approach is to vote on the Senate bill today, which I'm confident will pass, which is why they don't want it to vote, and then come together to work as we get past this election gong show process and be able to strike what truly is a grand bargain when we have all the moving pieces at the end of the year, when we're not staring down the barrel of goofy election politics, and people will actually be able to work on what's in the best interests of America. And what's in the best interests of America is rejecting this assault on transportation and deal with rebuilding and renewing the country. Thank you, and I yield back.
Time of the gentleman has expired. The gentleman from Florida.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I appreciate the other side at least letting me know what they did over the last 2 years. They bifurcated the construction projects. They did it 6 times, and at least now we know that they have acknowledged what they did during those times when they only gave, in some cases, 1-month extensions. I yield 4 minutes to the gentleman from Florida, Mr. Nugent, my colleague.
Is recognized for 4 minutes.
I want to thank my friend from Florida and fellow Rules Committee member to allow me to speak today on behalf of this. You know, it's interesting to stand up here and listen to what comes across from the other side. They talk about the FAA bill. That's a bill that, while they were in control of this area since 2007, there was not a reauthorization of that bill until this year, until the 112th Congress came into power, that we now have a 4-year reauthorization of the FAA bill that sat over on the other side while they had control of this House since 2007. No action, other than just temporary fixes. And the same goes with now with this bill today in regards to transportation. They want you to believe that the Senate passed this great bill out of the Senate, a 2-year fix. Well, let me tell you, Mr. Speaker, a 2-year fix in this industry is like nothing at all. In speaking with developers, road construction folks in my state, they said a 6-month extension is as good as a 2-year extension, and basically all it does is keep their doors open. They don't hire new folks. They don't go out and purchase new equipment. They don't go to Caterpillar up in Peoria, Illinois, and buy more equipment, because what they told me was this. When the Senate came back out with an 18-month to 2-year extension, they canceled major equipment orders in Peoria, Illinois. They canceled those orders because there is no reason for them to invest millions of dollars in equipment on a 6-month, an 18-month, or a 2-year extension. We should be standing here talking today about a 5- to 7-year extension of the highway bill. That's what we should be talking about. That gives those builders some certainty. We talk about certainty. The other side talks about it at great length. But what certainty did they show when they had control of both houses, the Senate and the House, and the President? And what did they show for accomplishment? Other than short-term fixes that have nothing to do with certainty. The construction industry hires based upon certainty, how far they can look out. Road builder, major road builder that I talked to said, listen, Rich, it's just not going to work that way. Mr. Speaker, what they're saying to us is this, is for them to spend money to hire new workers, they need to have some certainty that they're going to have a 5 to a 7-year window to start building upon. Not a 6-month fix, not a 18-month fix, not a 2-year fix. Once again, builders I'm talking to are saying this. On these short-term fixes, all it does is keep the status quo alive, It allows them to keep the employees that they have, but they will not invest in new equipment, and they're not going to invest in hiring more employees because it's a short-term fix for them, not a long-term fix. We had the opportunity to do a paid-for, and I agree with my friend from Worcester when we talk about we should have a paid-for 5 to 7-year transportation bill, not a short-term fix. But if we don't do a short-term fix today, you heard my colleague from Florida talk about what's going to happen on Sunday. We're going to run all projects stop as we know it. That's not what this House should do. We need to pass the 90-day extension. We need to support this rule and pass the bill so we can move forward to really have so we can eliminate uncertainty, not what we have today. And with that, I yield back the balance of my time.
The gentleman's expired. The gentleman from Massachusetts.
Mr. Speaker, I yield myself such time as I may consume. I want to thank my colleague on the Rules Committee for making, I think, a very strong case why we should reject the 90-day extension and pass a 2-year extension. For this reason, 90 days means nothing. He diminishes the impact of 2 years. Most people I talk to would prefer 2 years than 90 days. And here's the difference. You know, we have a democratically controlled Senate that worked out a deal with Republicans. Barbara Boxer and Jim Inhofe came together. Very opposite individuals when it comes to politics. They came together. Here, the Republicans are fighting with Republicans. Democrats have been locked out of this entire process. And let's get real here. Let's be honest with the American people. As reflected in the budget that you're all going to vote for later this afternoon, which decimates highway and road and bridge funding, which basically destroys, I think, the basis for a strong infrastructure program in this country. You know, you're not here trying to argue about a better bill. You're trying to figure out a way to give states less, to give cities and towns less, that would undercut a lot of the projects that are being contemplated all across this country that will not only put people back to work, but to make us more economically secure. So that's what this is all about. It's about trying to come up with even a lousier transportation bill than the one that you brought to the House floor. At this point, I'd like to yield 3 minutes to the gentleman from New York, Mr. Bishop.
The gentleman from New York is recognized for 3 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise in opposition to the rule, and I oppose the motion to move the previous question. I am growing more and more deeply concerned that our Republican colleagues simply don't get it. They do not understand that their ideological crusade to starve the beast has only resulted in starving the American worker. Here we are today taking up the third version of the Republican kick-the-can infrastructure plan down the road in a single week, the third version in a week. If that's not a complete failure of leadership, I don't know what is. We are a mere 2 days away from the expiration of our highway programs, and they have their hands over their ears, desperate not to hear common-sense solutions like the bipartisan Senate highway bill. Since the beginning of the 112th Congress, we have witnessed time and time again their my way or the highway approach to governing. As a result, job creation is suffering, working families across the nation are suffering, the construction industry is in the middle of the construction season and they're suffering, because House Republicans want to score political points with their ideological base rather than solve real-world problems with real-world solutions. This week, the House Republicans were forced to remove 2 short-term highway extension bills from floor consideration because they would rather dig deeper into the conservative ranks of their caucus than reach across the aisle to discuss solutions for the American worker. Sadly, this is nothing new. They've been doing this for the past 15 months. We have lurched from self-created crisis to self-created crisis. I count at least 5 over the last 15 months. And yet they wonder why the American public's perception of Congress is at an all-time low. Meanwhile, I've sponsored H.R. 14, the Senate highway bill, a bipartisan path forward that makes meaningful reforms and provides certainty to states. I'm proud to be offering this bipartisan legislation to refocus the discussion on jobs and economic opportunities rather than the Republican message this week of tearing down Medicare and protecting the 1% at the expense of middle-class families. As of today, House Republicans have yet to put forward a credible highway reauthorization that puts Americans back to work. Their only attempt, H.R. 7, the Boehner-Micah authorization, was called the worst highway bill ever by Secretary of Transportation LaHood, a former distinguished member of this body, a Republican. Was drafted in the dark of night without any Democratic input. It removed transit from the Highway Trust Fund, broke a 30-year bipartisan cooperation to fund transit, and it couldn't attract a single Democratic vote nor even a majority of Republican votes. Over in the Senate, MAP 21 passed overwhelmingly with a bipartisan majority and is fully paid for, something House Republicans seem unable to come close to achieving. The MAP 21 pay-fors are less controversial than those contained in the House Republican bill. The Senate has estimated that MAP 21 will save 1.8 million jobs and create up to 1 million more jobs. It's almost 3 million jobs wrapped up in this legislation. Have another minute, Jim.
I yield the gentleman additional 1 minute.
The gentleman is recognized for 1
Thank the gentleman for yielding. During a weak economic recovery looking for a jump start, this is the kind of legislation we need to be passing. House Republicans had their chance to address our infrastructure needs with H.R. 7. Instead, they chose to pander to their base and chase ideological extremes. I'm sorry to say their effort was an utter failure. MAP 21 has the support of Senate Democrats, Senate Republicans, House Democrats, and the administration. It's time that the House Republicans got on board with job creation instead of fighting it. Americans want jobs and safe roads and bridges. The Senate passed the biggest jobs-creating bill in this Congress by an overwhelming bipartisan majority. We have the chance to do the same thing. Let's move the H.R. 14, and let's put this country back to work. I yield back the balance of my time.
Gentleman's time has expired. The gentleman from Florida.
Mr. Speaker, I yield 2 minutes to the gentleman from Florida, my friend, Mr. Micah.
The gentleman from Florida is recognized for 2 minutes.
Well, thank you for yielding, Mr. Speaker and my colleagues. Let's just set the record straight. The other side says that this wasn't a bipartisan process. First of all, the first hearing was held in the ranking Democrat member's hometown and district in West Virginia. We went from sea to shining sea all the way to Los Angeles to accommodate a bicameral, unprecedented, bipartisan hearing in Los Angeles. Again, the comments that are made here do not reflect reality. In the committee, we took 100 Democrat amendments, and we accepted about 20 of them. In addition to when we drafted the legislation, 60% of the recommendations of the Democrats were in the draft that came before the committee. So this stuff about it not being bipartisan, then the Republicans can't get it done. These are the people that cannot get it done. They control the House. They control the Senate. They control the White House during this entire process. They couldn't even get it to committee. They could not get the bill to committee. It passed to subcommittee. So we have passed it. And they've made bipartisanship in this committee a one-way street, and it wasn't that way before. They will close down major projects across this country if we don't pass this extension. Why are we here for this extension for 90 days? Because we offered 90 days to begin with. And they said, no, we won't do 90 days because we want to keep things stirred up. So we said, well, what do you want? They said 60 days. So, well, okay, in the spirit of bipartisanship, we'll go 60 days. So then they rejected that. They threw, some of the Democrats threw each other under the bus, so to speak, and here we are at 90 days again. So Folks, let's get facts straight and reality straight. Republicans want America to work and our infrastructure to be built. Yield back the balance.
Gentleman's time has expired. The gentleman from Massachusetts.
Mr. Speaker, I yield myself such time as to make it. So let's get the facts straight. Let's talk about this great bipartisan process. All we're asking for today is to have an alternative to be voted on. One substitute. That's it. That's all we've been asking for. And we've been told, no, you can't. It's your way or the highway. That's not bipartisanship. And all these great bipartisan amendments, let everybody be clear on one thing. Not one single amendment has been considered to the transportation bill on this House floor. Not one single amendment has been allowed. You yanked the bill when I guess some of the extreme right wing got upset on your side for whatever reason. Also, because there were a lot of moderates who realized that the bill that you brought to the floor would bankrupt the Highway Trust Fund. That was bad policy for this country, and that it was not going to help rebuild our infrastructure. So, the only bipartisan, proposal we have before us right now, which is not perfect, but is the only bipartisan product, is the Senate bill, which passed 74 to 22. At this time, I'd like to. I'm happy to yield a minute to the gentleman from the ranking member of the Transportation Committee.
The gentleman from West Virginia is recognized for 1 minute.
I thank the gentleman for yielding. I'd ask for this time only because the chairman referred to opening these hearings in my hometown of Beckley, West Virginia, which he did, and I appreciate that very much, and the many other hearings he had across the country. But the question is, you have to learn from these hearings, and you have to incorporate from these hearings into the bill that you end up finally writing. And I'm not sure that was done from what the gentleman heard from my home state. In addition, which the gentleman from Massachusetts has referred to the bipartisanship of the other body, we all know in this town and across the country how hard it is to get the United States, to get that other body to agree on anything. Even if it was a resolution saying I love mother, it's hard to get 60 votes over there for anything. Yet they got 72 votes for a bipartisan transportation bill. They got half of the Republican members of that other body to support a bipartisan transportation bill. We have tried, as the gentleman from Massachusetts knows, to bring that up in Rules Committee, to make it in order. Myself, the gentleman from Oregon, Mr. DeFazio, the gentleman from New York, Mr. Bishop. We've tried and tried and tried to bring that up, and on the floor of the House. Yet we get turned down at every turn in the road, at every corner in the road. We get turned down in our efforts to bring up the bipartisan Senate transportation bill. And it's not very often that you will find such a measure produced by that other body. Yet they've done it this time, and we cannot get it brought up to the floor of this body. I thank the gentleman for yielding.
Gentleman from Florida.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Pass the extension. Reserve my time.
Gentleman reserves your time. The chair will remind the members to refrain from trafficking in the well during debate. The gentleman from Massachusetts.
Mr. Speaker, before I yield to the gentleman from Oregon, Mr. DeFazio, I just want to point out something for my colleagues here. One of the reasons why many of us prefer the Senate bill to even the House bill that you brought to the floor, then split up and then yanked from the floor, is because the Senate bill sustains approximately 1.9 million jobs on an annual basis. The House Republican bill destroys 550,000 jobs compared to the current funding level. So what you had brought to the floor and then you yanked was a job killer. At this point, I'd like to yield 3 minutes to the gentleman from Oregon, the ranking member of the Highways and Transit Subcommittee, Mr. DeFazio.
It's for 3 minutes.
This is really a discussion about the future of transportation in America. And it's a very basic difference. The Republicans are being hung up because there's a substantial portion of their caucus that believes, truly believes, there is no federal interest. We should not have a national transportation policy. It should be devolved to the states. Well, that's what this looks like when you devolve to the states. Kansas Turnpike, 1956. Oklahoma said they'd build their section. They didn't. They were launching cars into Amos Schweitzer's cornfield for the next 8 years. This was about the failure of a 50-state transportation policy. They
are being hung up by enough people to hold up this bill on their side who believe this is the way the country should look in the future. Now, we want jobs. Even if they could move their H.R. 7, which they can't because of this faction, they would cut funding by 20%. We got 150,000 bridges on the federal system, national highway system, need repair or replacement. 40% of the pavement needs substantial redoing, not just resurfacing. $70 billion backlog on our legacy transit systems. That's our 20th century system. And there's no money in this for a 21st century system. And now they're saying, well, this is their vision. Their vision, it's one of two visions. Cut 20%. The Ryan budget actually would cut transportation by 35% from current levels. Or the flat earthers who say there's no federal interest in a national transportation system. One of those three things is going to come out from their side. 20% cut, 35% cut, or no program. We have an alternative. Let's vote on the Senate bill. When you can get 22 Republican senators to vote to extend the program for 2 years, and we had one gentleman say, oh, 2 years, nothing, no equipment orders. Well, guess what? I have a list here, and this is just the beginnings of a list, of 7 state DOTs who have contacted the American Association of State Highway and Transportation Officials saying 90-day delay will cost jobs, 40,000 jobs in North Carolina. And on down the list. Nevada, Maryland, Michigan, Rhode Island, West Virginia, New Hampshire have all reported in about projects they're going to delay or cancel if we do another 90-day extension and we don't do the 2-year bill. The 2-year bill is enough certainty for these projects to move forward. No, it's not optimal. We need a real 5-year bill, but we don't need a 5-year bill that guts or destroys the program. And those are the alternatives you're offering us here. Just give us one vote. Just one vote. Let us vote on the Senate bill which passed with a bipartisan, true bipartisan bill. This is not a bipartisan bill, and the gentleman from Florida is a good friend, but look, we did not sit down and look at this bill and review it. It was presented to us.
Morgan has expired. The gentleman from Florida.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Again, I'll go back over this list because we must have forgot it since a few minutes ago when I gave it again. The Democrats, when they were in control, passed a 1-month extension back in October 1st, 2009. 1 month, no amendments. 1.5 months, a little bit later, no amendments. 2.5 months, no amendments. 1 month, no amendments. 9 months, no amendments. 2 months, no amendments. I'm not sure what they're talking about, Mr. Speaker. Pass the extension.
Gentleman reserves his time. Gentleman from Massachusetts.
Mr. Speaker, on that, I yield 1 minute to the gentlewoman from Texas, Ms. Jackson-Lee.
Gentlelady from Texas is recognized for 1 minute.
I thank the gentleman very much, Mr. Speaker. The unemployment is going down, but there are people still unemployed. Right now, we have a Senate bill on transportation, and many don't understand what that means. That is a wide gamut of highways and mass transit and infrastructure ready to be signed by the President of the United States so that millions of Americans can go to work, and this body won't allow us to vote for a bill that has already passed the Senate. Higher funding levels to be able to build. More jobs, 1.9 million annualized. Buy America, do I love it? Buy America, making sure that we buy the products right here in America so that not only are we building with American workers, those who supply us, providing guaranteed transit funding for all of America, the crumbling infrastructure of transit, we're providing for it. And in Houston, Texas, we need those monies and we need the operational monies. And so here's my point. Unemployment is going down. The President is moving forward on employing and empowering Americans, and they won't put the Senate bill, bipartisan bill,
Time of the
on
gentlelady
the floor.
from Texas has expired.
It is today that we need to vote.
Time of the gentlelady from Texas has expired. The gentleman from Florida.
Here in America. I ask a no vote on the rule. I yield back.
Could I inquire of Mr. McGovern how many more speakers he has?
I have the ranking member of the committee and myself.
I reserve my time.
Gentleman reserves his time. The gentleman from Massachusetts.
Mr. Speaker, it's my privilege to yield 3 minutes to the gentleman from West Virginia, the ranking member of the Transportation Committee,
The gentleman
Mr.
from West
Rahal.
Virginia is recognized for 3 minutes.
I thank the gentleman from Massachusetts for yielding. Mr. Speaker, I'd like to emphasize that the extension the majority is bringing to the floor this morning is too long, and it will do nothing but continue the uncertainty that states and businesses, small businesses I might add, have faced since the expiration of the last long-term bill in August '09, 2.5 years and 8 extensions ago. Uncertainty is what we are continuing by the passage of this extension today. Uncertainty among the small business community in this country. They need the certainty with which to plan contracts. This happens to be the springtime of the year, the time when contracts are let and when jobs are planned and when people need to know if they're going to be working or not 90 days from now. This is the contracting season with the work usually done during the summer and then concluded by the fall, and the bottom lines are added up. We have already heard stories of small businesses that have had to cut back from 80% of their budget to 40% or less because they don't know what the Congress is going to do in terms of a long-term transportation bill. To elaborate on what my colleague from Oregon, Mr. DeFazio, has said, the impacts on our state DOTs of endless extensions and the inability to plan for current and future transportation needs are very real. And here are just a few of the examples. North Carolina has delayed projects totaling $1.2 billion, affecting 41,000 jobs. Nevada and Maryland each report 4,000 jobs are at risk due to projects being delayed. Michigan has only let 35% of its projects, or $180 million below its normal activity level, and has delayed several large construction projects. Rhode Island has delayed $80 million worth of projects and planning for needed safety and structural improvements of a major interchange. My home state of West Virginia reports that an extension would result in a 10% cut in programs, affecting over 1,200 jobs, and the state of West Virginia may be forced to shut projects down or delay payments to contractors to manage cash flow. New Hampshire, Mr. Speaker, Pro Tem, will not award contracts on $80 million in projects that were recently bid, affecting 800 job years, and will delay $150 million in bond issuance for the construction of 2 exits. And Illinois estimates that the uncertainty posed by stopgap funding measures means 4,500 jobs could be lost, and that ongoing uncertainty will increase contractor risk and cause higher bids for construction projects. Without congressional action on the Senate bill, many states in the Northeast and Midwest stand to lose an entire construction season. That would be a devastating blow to many states as they slowly recover from the worst construction downturn since the Great Depression. While millions of construction jobs and much-needed infrastructure projects hang in the balance, our colleagues on the other side of the aisle have spent weeks driving in circles. They have at least been consistent and embraced this theme of uncertainty in their own internal deliberations. I yield back.
Time of the gentleman has expired. The gentleman from Florida.
Mr. Speaker, I'm prepared to close, reserve my time.
Gentleman will reserve his time. The gentleman from Massachusetts.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I yield myself the remaining time.
Gentleman's recognized for 3 minutes.
Mr. Speaker, if we defeat the previous question, I will offer an amendment to the rule to provide that immediately after the House adopts this rule, it will bring up H.R. 14, the Moving Ahead for Progress in the 21st Century Act. This is the House companion to the bipartisan Senate transportation bill that passed in the other body 74-22. Mr. Speaker, I ask unanimous consent to insert the text of the amendment in the record along with extraneous material immediately prior to the vote on the previous question.
Without objection, so ordered.
Mr. Speaker, this House of Representatives is not working. It's not working for the American people. At a time when jobs should be the most important priority of this Congress, we have a leadership that talks about everything but jobs. And when it comes to jobs, nothing could be more important than passing a transportation bill. The Republicans brought a terrible bill to the floor, so terrible they couldn't even force their own members to vote for it. They had to pull it. And now we're in this period of delay, kick the can down the road, kick the can down the road. And what makes this situation, I would say to my friend from Florida, unique as compared to previous years is that we actually have a bipartisan bill that has passed one of the chambers. A bipartisan bill in the Senate that passed overwhelmingly, 74-22. authored by Barbara Boxer and Jim Inhofe, two polar opposites of the political spectrum. They could come together. They came together and put the American people first. They put jobs first. It wasn't about ideology. It wasn't about getting the perfect for either of them. And yet here we are still, fighting over the most ridiculous things and bringing the most inconsequential pieces of legislation to the House floor when we should be focused on passing bills like this. Now, I'm told we need to do this because we're going on another recess. God forbid we stay here and actually work on something that will be meaningful for the American people. This bill is so important to our economy that, quite frankly, it's worth us staying here a few extra days and getting this thing done. Instead, we're going to kick the can down the road for 90 days. Next week, nothing will be done. We'll come back, and then what? Then what will happen? Essentially, what we're doing here is we're telling the American people that we're not putting them first, we're not putting jobs first. For the life of me, I can't understand why this Congress, this leadership, which claims to be open, won't even give us a vote. We can't even get a vote on the Senate bill. If you want to vote against the Senate 2-year extension and vote instead for your 90-day extension, fine. But let us have an opportunity to vote on something that will mean something to our communities, that will put people back to work. Why are you denying us this vote? I have yet to hear anybody say why we can't have a vote on this. We had no amendments debated on this House floor on the transportation bill. We ought to have this debated. I urge my colleagues to vote no on the previous question so a little democracy can happen here on the House of Representatives.
The gentleman from Massachusetts has expired. The gentleman from Florida.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The situation we find ourselves in is certainly not ideal. I've